Hi everyone. In this particular tutorial, you will understand how to open a new file and what are the different information that you need to know before you open a new file. Now, most often you will not be doing that because you'll be already having an image and you will be working on the image itself. But there are times when you want to work something from scratch. In that case, you have to create an image which is blank, and on the blank image, you can actually insert more than one image. You can make a collage. You'd also would want to start from scratch if you want to draw something on scratch, not over some other photograph, for example. So let's understand what are the different things that you need to know when you about to open or create a new document or new image in Photoshop. For that, you will go to File and you will click on New. When you click on New, this dialog box opens. Now here you can also give a name of the document, or you can give the name once you finish the document and you're about to save the file. I mean, whichever way you want to work. The preset is actually some already defined presets. Now this is a great thing that Photoshop gives you, because if you are looking at working at web in particular, then you can click on web and it will automatically populate the different information that normally goes with a web image. The first one is size. These are different sizes available, or you can always define a size. You can customize a size. Okay, this is the number of the different units. Normally when we work in web, all we care about is pixels, so by default it is in pixels. You can always change it if you want to work in some other units. Here, the resolution. Now normally when you're working on image which is ultimately going to go on the web, then this is the good enough image resolution that you need, because you're not going to print this. In fact, when you're working in web or in pixels, this doesn't really matter, because this is used only when you're about to print it. Let me give you an example. If I go and choose US paper, and you can see that here automatically it took inches. You can work in any other. Pixel wouldn't make sense here, because ultimately we are looking at something which we want to print. So pixel doesn't really matter here. Whatever unit you prefer to work in. I normally prefer to work in inches, so I'll leave it to inches. Here the resolution is important, because in any inkjet printer or laser printer, 300 resolution is good enough to print. So here you are concerned with this only when you're about to print, or you are working in a document which you ultimately want to print. Color mode. Lot of information required for color mode, but in general, when you're working on any image, you can choose to work in RGB. If you are working on an image which you ultimately going to print, you can always convert the colors mode to CMYK, because in printing you use CMYK. RGB has got benefits. Why? Because it gives you more color, it gives you more options, it gives you more effects. So when it comes to choosing a color mode, go with RGB. Until unless you are very clear that you don't want to work in RGB and you are working in something which you are going for, ultimately is going for professional print, then you can work in CMYK. Even if you're working in black and white, remember to use RGB only, because here you get 3 channels: RGB, red, green, blue. In black and white, if you ultimately choose to work in grayscale, then you're just getting 1 channel. It's always better to work in 3 channels. More about it when you're actually working in black and white photographs, because these 3 channels really matter how the gradient or the grayscale in the black and white photograph actually works out. So RGB is good enough when you're working with black and white photograph as well. Background is the background, what kind of background you get. You can choose white, which is a white color, or the background color. More about background and foreground color when we talk about it in detail later. This is your background and foreground color. Okay, or you can go with transparent, which has got no color. Okay, I'm happy with white, so I'll keep it to white. This is a color profile. This is actually to do with color management. You have so many color profiles. The one above the line is the most often used. Okay, this one sRGB is the most common, in the sense like this is good enough for both, for printing, for photograph, for web. So this is a good enough color profile to work with. Sometime you would want to work in RGB, because a client might demand you to work in RGB, because they might be having already some photographs or PSD files which are already in Adobe RGB, so you wouldn't want to stick to that. When you take a normal photograph by a digital camera, it is always taken in normally in sRGB. So this is the most common, so stick to that. Pixel aspect ratio is important for you when you are working in video, because in video the pixels are not square, they are non-square, and that depends upon all the different kind of formats that is available when you are working with video. So square pixel is good enough when it is not going for video. When it's going for video, you need to take care of this. Now let me open any other in photograph. Also in photo you have this typical sizes for photo. So if you are ultimately going to be printing in a photo size, for example, then ultimately choosing a photo preset would be helpful. But me, I am looking at working in web, so I'll go to web, I'll choose a particular size. This is a good enough size for me, 72. Let me point out one important thing here. Normally nowadays all the LCD monitors you get in the market is of 90, so I'll work with 90. 72 is the older CRT monitors. Well, it's up to you. You can work in 90 or 72, won't make much of a difference, because ultimately you are working on web. It is not going to go for printing, so it's up to you. But increasing it obviously will increase the size. This is also what will actually matter, the size, the file size. 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit. Normally you can work in 8-bit. 16-bit will actually allow Photoshop to store more information per pixel. In each pixel the color information can be stored more if you choose 16-bit. That will also increase your file size. Okay, and your RAM will also going to be increased, and your RAM usage will also increase. So stick to 8-bit, it's not bad. Clicking on OK will give me a web size document which is of 90 resolution and the size as I defined earlier in the dialog box. So now I have opened a new document which is blank, which has got just one layer with white background. Okay, my color profile is sRGB and my color mode is RGB, so I'm ready to go.